Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to The Walk. Today is Wednesday, November 27th, and we've been talking about Aholah and the fact that she represents Israel. We talked about the fact that her name represents a tent and that Jesus is going to come out of this society even though they are a mess. We've also talked about the fact that they are very drawn to these Assyrians that are in their area, and that they've allowed themselves to take their eyes off of God and turn towards these Assyrians and allowed themselves to get involved in the idolatry that the Assyrians had gotten them, were engaged in. We also talked about the fact that these Assyrians came in on these mounted horses and looked very, very good to these people. They were very impressed by it. Those horses are turned by a bridle and they were wearing purple. We dug into the name to the word purple, and when we did that, we discovered that it is about turning and being tamed and being pointed in a direction, and it tied right back to the fact that those horses wear that bridle. So that brings us up to chapter 23, verse 8, and it says, "She did not give up her whoring, but that she had begun in Egypt. For in her youth men had lain with her and handled her virgin bosom and poured out their whoring lust upon her. Therefore I delivered her into the hands of her lovers, into the hands of the Assyrians, after whom she lusted." Okay, we've got to keep in mind, this is an analogy. Anytime it says she or her, they're talking about the nation of Israel. That's what they're talking about, because this is the Aholah section. And this lust and all these sexual references are actually the fact that they cheated on God to go into the idolatry. Instead of praising God, they're praising these idols. Now, the interesting thing is, God never removed their free will. He never took away their choice to either follow him or not follow him. And when they chose to not follow him, he's like, well, then I'm going to give you into their hands. And you're going to be conquered by these armies, and you're going to be exiled to Babylon. They were permitted to pursue what they thought they wanted. Now, a lot of times, the things we think we want and the things we think are the best for us are not what's best for us. God knows what's best for us, and we have to have that faith and trust and know that. So I started to look into the word hand. Now, where did we see hand? Therefore, I delivered her into the hands of her lovers, into the hands of the Assyrians, after whom she lusted. Now, the word hand in Hebrew can also, it indicates power, means, and directions. And when you get to the pictograph, it was very interesting. It's a picture of a door that allows movement in and out of the tent. Combined, these mean the hand moves. Once again, it's pointing right back to the bridle in the horse's mouth. Their heads have turned away from God and over to these Assyrians. The hand is the part of the body that enables man to perform many works. Instead of performing those works for God, they're now performing the works for these Assyrians and their idols. So when we put this together, we have Israel being treated as a very vulnerable, innocent woman, and these Assyrian men and this Assyrian nation is taking advantage of them, turning them away from God and allowing them to move into that idolatry. So don't get me wrong, the people of Israel are still being held responsible for their behaviors, and that part of our relationship with God is to not turn away and remain faithful to him. When I looked at the Apologetic Study Bible, there was a note for that phrase, they played the whore. Israel, and it said, Israel entered alliances first with Assyria and then with Egypt. Eventually, they began imitating and conforming to the ungodly practices and idol worship of these nations. Later, the younger sister, Judah, did the same thing. Then verse 10 says, "These uncovered her nakedness. They seized her sons and daughters. And as for her, they killed her with the sword. and she became a byword among women when judgment had been executed on her. All right, how do we apply this to our lives? Here's where what's really being pointed out to me as I'm praying over this in the back of my mind while I talk is we are so easily swayed. We are in a culture where we are bombarded with this is good, that is good, the other thing is good, all these other things are good. And that's what our culture is telling us. That's what's happening to Israel in these passages. This is good, this is good, this is good. And they're saying, oh yeah, you're right. And that Casting Crowns song, Slow Fade, is kind of playing in my mind right now. Because you start with like one concession of, oh, you know, that may not glorify God, but I'll do it anyway. And then it becomes, another, and then another, and then another. And before you know it, you've gotten so far away from God, he's barely in your life anymore. And once again, you got God, we've got us. God never moves. It is us. We're the ones that move. We've got to remember that as we go through our day. Have a wonderful day. God bless, and keep walking the walk.